It's the Wednesday edition of Kelly and Company, but Kelly's not here. Ramia Amadin and Nisreen Abdelmajid holding down the fort. We've got a packed show. Number one, being nosy about your neighbors might be frowned upon, but being nosy about yourself is very important when it comes to your sinuses. And Francis Wong is going to get us covered on that health front. If you're thinking of closing down your business as an entrepreneur, Kevin Shaw is telling us how to wind down your business the right way with grace, strategy, and no loose ends. Plus, director of a reimagination of the Shakespeare play that we all know, Hamlet, at Luminato Festival this year is going to be joining us, Sheila DeFerrari. And this performance casts performers with Down syndrome. So it's a very interesting show. We're going to learn all about it with Sheila. And finally, Wendy Porch is the executive director of CILT. This is the Center for Independent Living in Toronto. They are celebrating their 40-year anniversary in empowering people with disabilities to live independently. So we're going to learn all about that and everything else I mentioned. So let's get started.
This is Kelly and Company.
We start taping at noon Eastern. The show goes out at 2 p.m. Eastern every day. So by noon, sometimes I feel like I've had an entire day, depending on if I woke up at like 6, 7 a.m. And other times I feel like we're just getting started because you guys are the first people I talk to. So which one is it for you today?
For me, it feels like it just started because, same thing.
Yeah.
My day just started and it's so weird. It's so weird because before we used to record so early.
So early.
You know? Yeah. And especially when I was on Now with Dave Brown, we'd record early.
Oh, the roundtables at like 9, 10 o'clock hour.
Yeah. So my day started early, but now it's like, okay, I get my coffee, no pressure. I can get dressed, like at a later time.
Your time.
But before I was jumping out of bed, getting dressed, putting my makeup on, and it's just
and then figuring out what to bring to the round table. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Priorities.
Kelly and I have had different versions of this. So we used to tape at 3 p.m. Eastern when the show was from 3 to 5. And then it became 2 to 4. And then I think there was a time when we were kind of taping ahead a little bit, like pre-tapes and things like that. But this noon hour sits nicely. And it's only a 1 hour show now anyway.
This the best?
I like this the best.
Yeah.
You know?
It doesn't feel too late,
it doesn't feel too late. It's an hour show. Yeah. And then we have like a billion meetings after this. So it is the first thing.
Exactly. You missed the 2-hour show though?
It's hard to tell. Like I miss having a lot of content every day because it felt different. Like 2 hours of content and 8 contributors or guests feels very different. It feels like a longer learning session. And now it's only an hour. So it feels like it's gone quickly, but it's different. It's a different comparison.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on the fence about that.
Samesies. On today's health and wellness segment, we're talking about something that most of us have experienced upon waking up, and that's a stuffy nose. Oh my God, that's my biggest problem right now. Francis Wong is here to shed light on sinuses. Francis, tell us about this because I feel like everybody I know has had this issue and it's so annoying.
Yeah, so this is definitely something I think that is more noticeable this time of year, or I mean, even though we're heading into summer, there's still a lot of pollen and things in the air. So let's address this. I'm going to be sharing some interesting and maybe some disgusting facts about the human body used to impress your friends and family at your next trivia game night. So let's off with a joke.
Which category would this go in? Like general knowledge, though?
This is it is kind of a fact. Speaking of stuffy noses, why can't your nose be 12 inches long?
Why?
I don't know. Something about a foot.
Because it would be a foot. Exactly. Oh. There you go.
Okay.
Half answer. It worked though. Okay. Nice.
All right. So what is something that you notice when you've got a cold when it comes to breathing, other than it being annoying? This is not a joke. This is a serious question.
Yeah, the real
I was
answer.
ready.
Okay.
Okay, Rems, you answer this.
Okay,
Pressure on
so
you.
like other than it being stuffy and hard to breathe, I don't know. I start getting headaches. It feels like mucus buildup. It starts affecting other parts of like
It feels like
my
it's closing
system.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. So
Oh, my ears get
for
blocked.
me,
All kinds of stuff.
yeah. Yeah, all of that. For me, it's generally that one side of my nose gets stuffed up, and then especially like when I'm waking up, and I'm a side sleeper, so I wake up and it's like one
Mm,
side of my nose is completely plugged.
Yeah.
yeah.
So first of all, I bet that when you've been sitting around that you're probably thinking to yourself, gee, I hate having a stuffy nose when I wake up. And then you wonder,
Hmm.
how much snot does the human body produce on average
Oh my
each day?
God.
Of course, that's what
Do
we're
you want
wondering.
to take a
Yeah. It's
yes.
like a.
Do you want to take a guess?
I do
A
not.
liter.
Oh my gosh,
Ew.
that's way too much, Ramya. Way too
Oh,
much.
okay.
Yeah. Come on, girl.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yes.
It's so it's less than that, thankfully, but it's still I would consider 40 milliliters or about a cup of nasal mucus, and that
Oh
is
my
every
That's pretty
God.
day.
gross.
So
I was
That's
actually
pretty
yeah,
gonna
gross.
you're probably thinking like, no way, where does this even go? So what ends up happening, which may be even grosser to you, is that we end up swallowing most of it, so we don't even notice.
Oh,
So
great.
Mm-mm.
yeah, so
Nazi's
I'm gonna
tapping out
add.
2 segments in a row with you.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna share with you another fun fact. Were you aware that we actually breathe mostly out of one nostril at a time, even when we're not sick?
No
Really?
way.
Yeah, so it's not
Like right
even
now,
like
we're mostly reading under one nostril.
I'm
exactly. It's
focusing on my
not.
breathing right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
It's not even like 55 on one side and 45% on the other. It's actually more like 70 side and 25% on the other side. And so it's and
Huh.
then the other interesting fact is that the dominant nostril changes throughout the day. So they even have a proper name for this, and it's called a nasal cycle. So this is when one nostril becomes a little bit congested and then it contributes to less airflow. At the same time, the other nostril becomes decongested, and this cycle switches about every 2 hours. So why does this happen?
Okay.
Yeah, I guess no one thought it was worth spending money to research this, but the speculation is that it allows moisture to build up one side so that our nostril doesn't get too dry. And then
Oh, that's
another
fair.
interesting
Oh.
fact, according to a 2016 study on the human nasal cycle, is that the right handed people tend to favor their nostril. So,
Favor
interesting
which
facts for
nostril?
you to use. The left, so the opposite, so
Okay.
right handed left nostril.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So when
Okay.
you're
This is
sick,
so
you
strange
already
to think
know.
about because now I'm starting to feel like not balanced, you know? Like,
Yeah.
Well, we also have a dominant hand, and our eyes are
yeah,
not even,
that's fair.
everything is not even right. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So when we're sick, you already know that both nostrils tend to get congested. So you're having a harder time breathing through your nose, no matter what part of the nasal cycle that you're in. So, in other words, the cycle has no impact on whether your nose is feeling plugged up or not. However interesting these facts may be, let's talk about some of the reasons why you may get morning nasal congestion. And this is assuming that you're not sick with a cold. And we kind of already
Mhm.
mentioned that, with the weather and things like that. The first common reason is allergens. So these are things such as dust mites, pollen, mold, pet dander. So with dust mites, someone is not allergic to the dust or the mites. I don't know if you're aware of this, that they're actually allergic to the poop of these mites.
Oh.
Oh.
So, yeah, so the particles of their feces is what causes some people to sneeze and have morning congestion and maybe itchy eyes. So every time that we're rolling around in our bed and fluffing our pillows or chasing the dog off the bed, we're basically launching allergens into the air and then we're just breathing it back in. So no wonder we can get congested. And
Hmm.
unlike pollen, which is generally a seasonal allergy, dust mites are found year round, even in the cleanest of homes. So,
Mhm.
speaking of dust mites, do you know where most of the dust in our homes come from?
Our dead
Uh.
skin cells?
Yes, you got it. It's actually from
Okay.
us,
Yeah.
Ramya. So
It's
we
so
should,
gross, Nizzy.
Okay,
yeah.
there, Rims.
We
That's because this grossed me out years ago, and I was like, ugh. My
Oh,
Yes,
vacuum is just full of my skin.
ew.
yes.
I mean, actually, that makes
So
sense.
It
Yeah.
does. It does.
we
So gross.
we shed skin cells every day, but it's the amount that, like you said, Rami, is a little bit disturbing. It's about 1 million skin cells over a 24-hour period. And if you put that into a year, 12 million cells is about 8 pounds or 3.6 kilograms of dead skin. So,
Eight
hence the
pounds.
importance of vacuuming regularly.
Just under a pound a day or like a month or whatever. Oh, gross. No, I
Oh
Eight
can't.
my
pounds. So yeah,
God.
less than a pound a
Yeah.
month, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
remember there was that show I talked about dry brushing? This is a good way to remove dead skin cells. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
And then another reason for a stuffy nose are irritants. So things like tobacco smoke, no surprise. And that can be someone either in your household that's smoking or you're exposed to smoke during the day. Or another irritant is gastroesophageal reflux disease, or GERD, where the contents of your stomach flows back up into your throat and then into your nasal passages. And then another reason for a stuffy nose could be due to body changes. So some studies have shown that hormonal changes during menstruation and pregnancy can also contribute. So why don't we talk about some of the ways that we can address these reasons? And they're probably things that you already do, but I'm thinking it's probably useful to go through some of these as a refresh for some people. And then maybe some of these are new suggestions for some listeners. So for
Mhm.
allergens, a paper back in 2018 states that US households are exposed to at least 3 to 6 allergens in our bedrooms every night. So it's pretty unavoidable unless you're camping outdoors, and then you're probably dealing with pollen or mosquitoes or something else. So, one of the best ways to reduce the dust mites colonies in your bedroom is regularly washing your bedding. So, a
Hmm.
minimum of once a week in hot water. These little buggers also love warm temperatures. So, keep your thermostat on the cooler side if you can. And then, cooler is
Mhm.
being 20 degrees Celsius or less. And then it's also great to use these mattress covers and pillow protectors that you zip up around your pillows to keep the dust mites out. And then you can launder those much more easily than you can try to wash a mattress or a pillow.
Those are usually dust mite protectant.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm.
Yes. And it's just much easier to kind of like, if their dust mites are pooping on
Yeah.
your pillow, they're pooping on the cover, and then you can just
Yeah.
Yeah.
toss that in. Excuse me. We discussed on a previous episode about having clean air in the house due to the amount of time that we spend indoors. So another indoor air filter is a good idea.
Okay.
They even have portable ones so that you can move them from room to room if you like. And then
Yeah, I mean,
dehumidifiers are also
air
great.
filters and dehumidifiers and all of these things are now like super portable. I remember when I was a kid, my
Yeah.
parents had one and it was just unreasonable to try to move it. So you'd get one for
Gigantic.
every room. Yeah. And it's so
Yeah,
heavy.
I
But now
know.
it's like, it's just like tiny little cute things.
And they were so ugly
Yeah.
They're
too, but
aesthetic.
now it's
I
actually
was
so
going to say,
nice.
they're so
I have a
aesthetic
gold
now.
one, and it just,
Excuse me.
it's
To
perfect
match
for
your
my living
decor.
room. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're
But
like
yeah,
multi, right? They're dehumidifiers, they're air filters,
yeah,
they're essential oil. Yeah.
yeah. You could add
Diffusers.
the essential oils inside, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so nice. Yeah, it smells really good.
Yeah. Anyway, shout
So
out.
dehumidifiers are also great because it makes it harder for the mites to survive.
Hmm.
So we also discussed this in a previous episode that you can look up the pollen forecast and try to spend less time outdoors on high pollen count days. So and
Right.
if you do go out, one of the easiest ways that you can get rid of it is, you come home, change your clothes, and shower so that you're minimizing the spread of of pollen into other areas of your home. And then
Right.
one other thing that I need to mention is mold. So if you're exposed regularly to mold, that could be another reason why you're waking up with a stuffy nose. So places where these guys like to grow are anywhere that can be a bit damp. bathrooms, basements, gutters, garbage cans, refrigerator drip pans, and anywhere that there may be a leak that is creating a damp surface. So
Mhm.
check these places for mold. And if it's quite bad and you can't remove it yourself, consider getting professional mold removers to assist. And then, of course, there are antihistamines and decongestants and even natural remedies that can help to lessen your symptoms. But you do want to consider removing as much of the causes as possible so you don't have to rely continuously on drugs or remedies. So, one natural remedy that I want to mention that you can use, and we may have talked about this before, is the neti pot. So, have you used Rami? I think you may have
Yeah.
used it.
I don't think I've used it, but I know what it is. I've contemplated using it
Yeah.
to clean out your sinuses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nisreen, have you used it?
No, I've never used it.
Okay, so it's where you rinse your nose with a pot of saline water or salt water, and it's basically nasal irrigation to help
Oh.
relieve congested sinuses as well as to moisten your nasal passages. And another thing that you can do, which can should be done only when you're clear of any colds or sinus infections, so this is kind of more like regular maintenance, is to use something called nasya oil, which is a traditional Ayurvedic nasal oil, and that's used to nourish and cleanse the nasal passages and helps to promote clear breathing and mental clarity. I like to put a couple of drops in each nostril while I'm in bed right before I go to sleep. And these oils can have many different herbs to help with different symptoms. So, of course, you want to check the ingredients and labels before using. You don't want to use this if you're pregnant.
Hmm.
But I find it really nice. It's got a bit of a strange smell that it takes a little bit of getting used to just because of the herbs that they put in. Um,
Hmm.
and if you're looking for this, it's usually found in specialty health shops or on Amazon. Unfortunately, it's not as common to find in Canada, but it is available. I usually buy it actually from the States and then bring it back. There is so much more that we can go on about, but I know that we are running short on time. And
I
I hope
know.
that you maybe learned a new thing or two about how to help with sinus issues. As I said, it could be a year-round thing. So any time of the year, you can pop back on and listen to this episode. As this is my last segment
Mm-hmm.
on Kelly and Company, I want to take the time to thank AMI and Kelly for having me on air for so many years alongside you, Ramya and Nizreen. It's been such a blast and an honor. And Ramya, thank you for taking that chance on me and giving me this opportunity to
Aw.
share my love of health and wellness with everyone. I really appreciate the freedom of being able to speak on such a wide range of topics, especially ones that people like to avoid. So, in a way, I'm hoping that I was able to normalize some of the natural functions of the human body. The good thing, or
Yeah.
maybe not so good thing, is that these episodes are forever on the internet. So you may have
Hmm.
noticed that I plugged a few of my previous segments in today's shows. And listeners are always welcome to go back and re listen or listen for the first time to some of those wacky and fun health topics.
I love
Hopefully,
it.
they'll find it interesting to listen to. And more importantly, I hope have been inspired to prioritize your health and well being. I've read a saying about a healthy man who wants a thousand things, but a sick man only wants one thing. And I'll leave you with one saying that I read by Saeed Balki, who is an entrepreneur. And he said, happiness is the new rich, inner peace is the new success, and health
Mm,
is the new wealth. So thank you so
I
much.
love it.
I
Francis,
love
you're the
it so
best. Thank
much.
you so much. You are
Yeah.
too humble. You've been here with all your expertise for years, and we've learned a million things in each episode, and the conversations have always been fun. You've taken the taboo and made it a reality check. So thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure.
Frances Wong has been with us for these health chats over the last 5 years, and we've learned so much from her, from appreciating quiet spaces to grounding ourselves, avoiding constipation, and creating peace in our homes. Thank you so much, Frances.
And Speaking of entrepreneurship at the end of Francis's segment, it's time to have a business conversation. And we're not talking about building businesses and curating tools for our businesses. Today, we're actually talking about winding down our businesses, because not every business ends in a dramatic crash. Although it may feel like that emotionally. Sometimes the most empowering move is to close with intention, whether it's a passion project that just ran its course or a strategic exploration of something, an exit. Winding down a business is something that a lot of entrepreneurs do face, and we want to know how to face it with grace. And who is here to tell us how to do that appropriately? Entrepreneur Kevin Shaw, of course. He's host of Mind Your Own Business on AMI TV, and he's here to walk us through how to close our businesses cleanly, legally, and with integrity. A lot of good keywords there, Kev. So let's start with the big one, though. How do you know when it's time to close down your business? What are the signs?
Well, good to be with you again. I think when people talk about winding down a business, it's often done with this sense of, well, I failed and I didn't make it, and therefore, it's time for me to quit. But there are some signs that it's time to close. So one of them would be maybe you're just plain out of money. You've just run out of money. You're not getting the customers. You can't pay your bills. There are a number of different financial reasons why you might be burned out, or things might not be going that well in your business. One of the other reasons could be just the market shifts around you. Imagine being a blacksmith at the end of the 19th century, and you're making horseshoes, and here comes the horseless carriage, and all of a sudden we have an automobile industry. All of a sudden, horses and buggies and horseshoes and all of the things that come with riding horses, not as prevalent as it used to be. And so, in that example, the market shifts around you. Or maybe a more recent example would be imagine being somebody who's making cassette tapes, when CDs have come along, and now it's MP3s, and now it's streaming. So, these are the signs that the market is shifting around you, and it's time to, make an exit. And of course, the final reason could be just you've got stuff going on in your personal life. Maybe you've got something like, a family member who's ill. Maybe you're ill. Maybe you've got a health concern to take care of. You've got somebody to look after in your family. You've got, some personal things going on. It could be that your passions and your interests have changed, and you no longer feel that this is your mission. You feel that you're being called to somewhere else.
No, it's obviously a very hard thing to do, and the best way is to leave gracefully, as you said, because there's so many people I know that get very salty after a business closed, and it gets really messy, and it's just not maybe there are different ways to close a business. And can you tell us more of how somebody can just leave a customer gracefully?
Yeah, so when you're closing a business, you want to make sure that you're communicating well with all of your stakeholders. So those stakeholders are obviously your employees. Maybe if you've got business partners as well, this is something that you don't want to, just walk into the office and, get on a call and say, hey, I'm shutting everything down. And you've got 5 partners who
bye.
Think everything is okay. Yeah. But, you want to make sure that you talk about that at senior level first, then go down to your employees. Maybe you want to talk to suppliers, contractors, vendors, people that you have a financial relationship with. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're talking to your professional service providers. These would be your lawyers, your accountants, maybe your bank as well, to let them know, like, hey, this is actually in the plans and in the works. we as in the customers normally see, we've all had the experience of driving by a location or going by a location, maybe it's a restaurant or a store, and we say, oh my gosh, they're no longer in business. How did this happen? They were just open last week. And this doesn't happen out of the blue. Obviously, there's a wind down process for each business. That could take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. And of course, the biggest stakeholder in your business is your customers. And so you want to let them know, maybe say, look, we're going to be getting rid of our inventory. We're having a final sale. Everything must go, as, all the radio ads used to say. And so, want to make sure that you are just letting your customers know, okay, we're closing in 2 months. We're closing in a month. We're closing in 2 weeks. We're closing in a week. And that way you're just always in touch with them.
Yeah. You want to give that validation to the customer, because at the end of the day, your reputation is on the line, right? So you want to stay loyal to those customers even after you close that business. You never know what's going to happen later. Maybe you start up a different business, a different project. You want to keep
Exactly.
that
Don't burn your bridges.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's one of the other things too, is to make sure that that you are leaving on good terms with your customers. Yeah. I know sometimes we've talked about these situations in the past where maybe a company makes a really huge mistake, but you want to make sure that you leave on really good terms with your customers.
Kev, we're talking about this on a very small scale, personal, if you are the business owner, here is the way to do this appropriately, right? But lately, I'm zooming out and we were all hearing about so many businesses closing. Pandemic onwards, it's just been kind of a spiral for a lot of local businesses and restaurants around us, but as well as things like Hudson's Bay Company and, just giant businesses shutting down. Are you feeling like people have the capacity and businesses have the capacity to be doing this the right way? Are you noticing at least any ones that even in this chaos of a lot of businesses shutting down, certain businesses that are doing it right? You can feel the vibe differently?
I think, Hudson's Bay is a really great example. Obviously, it's a Canadian institution. It's been around for over 3 centuries, 3.5 centuries. So, I think they did an okay job with moving a lot of that Bay branding over to Canadian Tire. So you can still go out and get a Bay blanket if you need to.
Sure.
But they were really good with letting their customers know. I think if you have obviously there are two sides to this. So one is if you have a relationship with the company and a really good relationship, they're going to make sure that you're taken care of, that you're on their emails, that you're getting text messages, that you're just really informed on social media. And then if you don't have a relationship with that company, they still want you to know that they are that they're closing and that things are winding down for them. So it's I haven't seen any companies in recent times get it wrong where all of a sudden they're closed and nobody knows what's going on, nobody knows what happens. I think we see that more in the airline industry where you go on vacation. We hear these stories. You go on vacation, beautiful 7-day vacation. You go to get back on the plane and then realize, they're no longer an airline. I'm stranded here in, Cuba or the Caribbean or somewhere. So, these are sort of very common stories with the airline industry. But I think in other industries, they do give you a little bit of a grace period to say, hey, things are going to be winding down.
Yeah. And, we've been focusing a lot about the customer because many of us, and especially the three of us around the table, that's the relationships we have with businesses, right? You're an entrepreneur and you've had history running businesses. But for Nasreen and I, a lot of what we're taking away from this is, as a customer, we want to know. But especially as employees or, partners of businesses too, that there's there's so much you can do to leave in a dignified way and to leave people feeling okay. We're kind of going through this right now, actually shutting down this show, right? And wrapping up and closing at the end of the month feels like a parallel because, like we want to make sure that we're talking to the audience, talking to contributors. And that's not always been the case, full transparency, but it's nice to do it that way. And it's nice to know that you can still communicate afterwards.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that you want to make sure that you are looking after your reputation. You want to make sure that you're looking after, obviously, your customers, your employees. You want to make sure that you're looking after your stakeholders, because at the end, when everything's wound down, you can feel, as an entrepreneur, you can feel very, very much burned out, especially if you left under circumstances where you were facing a crisis, or you had to solve, sort of this implacable problem of, I don't know, maybe it was a disaster. It could have been economic circumstances or something. And you just kind of internalize, like, I'm a failure, I'm a really bad person. Well, no, circumstances happen and life happens. Absolutely. And sometimes it's, we need to clear the way to make room for something new to happen. And, I think a big part of that is just managing that reputation, managing that relationship, because you never know. Entrepreneurs are really good at bouncing back, especially like very creative ideas, people like myself. You go out and you say, hey, I've got an idea for something else, and now I want to start this up again.
Yeah. And of course, there's all the logistical. We touched on a few, but there's, more in the legal side of things, and making sure you wrap properly, take care of your taxes and all that. But Kev, we got to let you go because we have 2 more guests before we wrap today. Thank you so much for all the conversations we've had around business and entrepreneurship with you. We don't have as much experience as you, obviously, in the business realm, but you've taught us so much, and we have our eyes open, like, wider now when it comes to these things. So thank you.
Well, I'm just so thankful that I've had the opportunity on this show, and I just wish you guys all the best. It's been an absolute blast over these many years to just come on here, and thank you for the opportunity and the platform.
Appreciate it. And we'll catch you on Mind Your Own Business on AMI TV. So you're not going anywhere.
Indeed. We'll stay in touch. Bye.
Okay. So today's conversation is a great reminder that closing a business isn't a defeat. It's not personal all the time. It's an intentional, thoughtful process, if you make it so, that many successful entrepreneurs go through. And it's about finishing well and moving forward with clarity, as Kevin Shaw indicated and pointed out. We've had incredible business-centered conversations with Kevin, and he's no longer on the show. Well, there will be no show after the 27th of June, but he's in the archives with all the other Kelly and Company episodes. So dig through the podcasts and check out Mind Your Own Business on AMI TV as well, because they're on season 4, I believe, and it is a lot of good fun, not just with Kevin, but with a lot of other entrepreneurs and business people with disabilities.
The Toronto Luminato Festival is going strong this month with fantastic art exhibits and shows around the city, an authentic representation of diversity. From June 13 to June 15, you can catch the performance of Hamlet, reimagined by director Cella Di Ferrari, casting 8 actors with Down syndrome. This production challenges traditional casting norms and shines a light on the importance of representation for individuals with accessibility requirements in the arts. Director Cella Di Ferrari is here with us now. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. A pleasure.
So
nice to have you.
Great having you. So we're craving to have more representation of marginalized groups in the arts, and this show is delivering. We have actors with Down syndrome in leading roles, defying stereotypes and offering a fresh, vital take on Shakespeare's classic work. Can you tell us more about this version of Hamlet?
Yes, I can tell you how it started. My English is not so good, but I'll do my best.
Oh, you're killing
All
it.
right.
You're killing it. Yes.
As a lifelong admirer of Shakespeare, Hamlet was always in my list of possible projects. I've done other works of Shakespeare, but for many reasons, year after year, I postponed Hamlet. That was a big possibility because I couldn't find the right actor. I was searching for someone who could truly embody the complexity and weight of the role. Then one day, Jaime Cruz, one of the actors of our play, he was working for some years as an usher in our theater, Teatro La Plaza, and he stood up in a meeting, an internal staff meeting, and presented himself to other actors, not as an usher, but as an actor. So I thought, what's that? I invited him for a coffee. And during that conversation, he told me his real dream was to be in La Plaza as an actor. And I suddenly saw him wearing the prince crown.
Nice.
And imagine the iconic words to be or not to be spoken by someone who's very right to be in public, artistic, and professional spaces is often questioned. And
Right.
it changed everything when I just imagined him in saying these words. And I thought, what does it mean to be held by an iconic actor? Usually Hamlet is played by iconic actors, the most important actors in the world want to do Hamlet. Then how will it be to make a provocation and have an actor with Down syndrome doing this intellectual, sophisticated Hamlet? And I thought it was going to be a very interesting provocation because the big question, to be or not to be, was going to be absolutely relevant and significant.
1000%. Like, what an intention, right? You're taking that phrase that everybody knows, to be or not to be, from Hamlet, and you're like, let's make that a thing. Like, let's center around that. And then you found the person, or the person found you, really, right? And
Yes.
now you have 8 actors with Down syndrome performing this incredible piece, very well known, as you said, that you've been holding off, and now you have it at Luminato Festival, debuting on the 13th, which is this Friday. So how is it working with these performers? Have you done anything differently? Has the process been challenging or wonderful as a director?
I think that the most important element, or maybe two, was the time we spend. We rehearsed for a year. That is not only because I didn't know, I haven't worked before with persons with Down syndrome, so I needed to spend time knowing each other so we can create a new text. But also because I like long processes. I love that. It's a
Oh,
luxury
good.
that we usually cannot have. We have to change the production ways to do to have a rehearsal for such a long period. And it was really worthwhile because we could spend time knowing each other, doing some exercises, and We build the piece through this year through improvisations, writing, reflections, and each actor specialized in one character,
Mm-hmm.
studying and studying them through drawings, songs, and personal memories. From there, we shape the script. I would write drafts at home and bring them into rehearsal where we will test them and refine them together. So while the piece was horizontal in spirit, it was also it had also a clear structure and direction. I like to
Right.
think that's what kept it grounded.
Okay. Fabulous. I'm so excited. First of all, there's so much, as Nisreen said in the interview, in the introduction, there's so much cool stuff happening at Luminato this year, and shows, art, installations around Toronto. This is going to be one of the highlights, I think, for people.
Yeah.
Is it in English, Shella?
No, it's in Spanish. We are from Peru,
Okay.
and
Mhm.
we come from there. And we always have subtitles. We have
Perfect.
subtitles in Chinese, in English. It depends where
Nice.
we go.
I love that.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Shella. This is amazing. I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you. I hope you go. You can
Yes.
assist
Yeah.
our Hamlet. And
Tickets
I
are still
hope you
available.
can dance with
Yeah.
us at the end of the show.
Oh,
Yes.
fun.
In the stage.
I love that.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So set aside everything you think you know about Shakespeare's Hamlet and check out director Cella Di Ferrari's reimagining of this production at the Luminato Festival this weekend from June 13 to the 15th. Tickets are available online, so check them out.
Yeah, and the Illuminata Festival is doing a great job with access this
They're
year.
killing it.
So, yeah, go online, find the tickets, get someone to help guide you or another whatever access needs you have. And what a nice thing to do on Friday the 13th, I think.
Yes.
And finally on the show, because it's been jam-packed with really fun and interesting conversations and very informative as well today, we are gonna welcome Wendy Porch, Executive Director of the Center for Independent Living in Toronto. You may know it as CILT. This is a non-profit organization in downtown Toronto run by people with disabilities. And what they do is empower people with disabilities to live independently. And they've been doing this for 40 years, 4 decades. It's their anniversary. Wendy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on, and congratulations on 40 years of CILT.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a huge milestone for us, 40 years. 40 years is
It
older than
is.
Netflix, and it's older than any
I
funding
love
contract
that.
we've ever had. So it's a pretty significant milestone for us.
Yeah, it is.
is.
Oh man. So how are you feeling about the accomplishments? What is accomplishment? What does it mean? What does 40 years at CILT exactly mean for the rest of us?
It is a huge milestone, I think. And in terms of what we've accomplished, we had an opportunity last week. We had an anniversary party at Hart House at the University of Toronto
Nice.
to sit and celebrate and meet up with community. We had about 125 people come. And we were able at our party last week to talk through the changes that have happened in 40 years. So 40 years ago, for people with disabilities, there were very, very few community supports. And in fact, our founding executive director, Sandra Carpenter, she sort of inspired a lot of CILT. Her and her sister were sent from their homes in Ottawa. They were moved from their home in Ottawa with their family to live at the Home for Incurable Children here in Toronto, which is now known as Holland Bloorview Hospital, away from their families in an institution because there weren't any supports for them to live in the community. So what we celebrated last week, what we continue to celebrate, is that CILT has stood for 40 years for developing supports so that people with disabilities do not live in hospitals, that people live in their own homes with their own families and make their own choices about their lives. So those are huge accomplishments for our community.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot that happens in 40 years. Just the growth of the organization, of course, from however small it was, whatever the intention was when it first started, to where it sits 40 years from then. So now in 2025, downtown Toronto, what would you say that scope is? Like, who do you serve? We did say people with disabilities, run by people with disabilities, and that's the community you serve as well, to live independently and empower. But what does that really mean in a place like Toronto in 2025?
So we primarily, the Center for Independent Living in Toronto, primarily supports people living with physical disabilities. So the people that we support are people who very often would be living in a hospital or living, a number of people that we support, for example, through our direct funding program, which is a revolutionary program that turns 30 this year, that allows people with disabilities themselves to receive funds from the Ministry of Health to hire their own attendants. And attendants are people that help people with physical disabilities with activities of daily living. So getting out of bed, getting dressed, sometimes at work. Through those programs, we have enabled people with disabilities who might otherwise, as I said, be living in institutions or in hospitals or, in a room somewhere, to really be out and living in community and be part of the world. So people on our programs have families. We have twins that are born to participants on our programs, have jobs, make choices, go on vacations, just like everybody else does. So it's extraordinary.
Awesome. And can you highlight some of the programs?
Sure. So I mentioned our direct funding program, which, as I said, is a revolutionary program that enabled consumers for the very first time to be the people who hired their attendants. Normally what happens is that a service will send out attendants to you, and it's usually on their schedule. So our direct funding program is revolutionary and allows the consumer to be the employer of their own attendants and to live their own lives accordingly. So it's a pretty extraordinary program, and it's across Ontario, that program. CILT is also the centralized application point for anybody who wants access to supportive housing or attendant outreach services in the Greater Toronto Area through our Attendant Service Application Center. And we work with all of the service providers who provide attendance services in Toronto to make sure that it's one spot for consumers to be able to go if you're interested in those kinds of services. So that's quite extraordinary. And then it's huge. And we have a range of programs that are called core programs that all independent living centers have. And they are peer-based programs. So we have a parenting with the disability network, because disabled people like myself can and should be also free to be parents. We have a service navigation program, and we have a program called IL Skills Facilitation that teaches people with disabilities how to advocate for yourself and your own rights. So it's very central to our values that disabled people can have choice, control, and dignity in their lives. And our programs support people in developing those kinds of skills. And we are unlike other kinds of disability organizations. I have a disability. Many of our staff have disabilities. Our chair and our vice chair of our board are also disabled people. So we really live our values of being disability-led too.
I love that. And what do you think has made it so sustainable and successful over the long haul? Because, as we said, 40 years is a long time. It is successful. But what do you think made it to that accomplishment?
It's such a great question. I think reflecting on the incredible gathering that we had of community and funders and consumers last week, I really think that it's the fundamental core belief that we all share, that disabled people, we ourselves are the experts in our lives, and we should be empowered to make the choices that we want to make. It's, as you both know, it's very much a contrast to the medical model of thinking about disability, where we as disabled people, we were always a problem to solve, right? Or something to cure, or something to diagnose. And central to our something to fix, exactly. And central to our beliefs is that there's nothing to fix here except society broadly. The real problem is a society that was never built to see us as disabled people. And so, we all share those values, and we all work to support and center the voices of our community. And I really think that that is the key to our success, is that we are not separate from community. we are of our community, and we're all pulling in the same direction for the values that we all hold, dignity, choice, and control. So I think that's it personally, and a great community around us. So we're lucky.
Yeah.
That's beautifully put.
Yeah. And what I really appreciate in a place like Toronto, because we have so many different kinds of services, organizations that are catered to specific people, specific communities, specific needs. So there are a lot of kind of collaborative projects and scenarios, right? Like you mentioned collaboration. Other organizations can say similarly. Like we can pull up a lot of available resources for us. You mentioned one of your programs is Ontario-wide. Are there other kind of things like that you want to shout out for challenges that are being addressed slowly or, as next steps, but also just where do we need to continue expanding for these kind of services?
This is a great question. In terms of the services, I think we continue to work to expand the direct funding program, for example. But, more locally in Toronto, I can say that there are still a number of challenges that face consumers trying to access either supportive housing or tenant outreach services. So, we see we have a huge wait list. So we are the administrators of the wait list for those services. And there are just simply not enough accessible units available for people with disabilities to live in and receive service in. So there's still a lot of work to be done there. And then just kind of outside of service provision, outside of attendance service provision, there's still a number of challenges facing our community, as you both know. So again, the lack of accessible and deeply affordable housing opportunities is truly something that we hear about at CILT on a daily basis. You cannot live independently in the community if you have nowhere to live. Our community still very much lives in poverty, as you know, and the Canada Disability Benefit itself, while, we had the great news recently of it not being clawed back by the Ontario government for people who are in receipt of ODSP or OW, it's still not enough money for our community to be lifted out of poverty. That is a significant and ongoing issue. And I think, also we've made a lot of strides in terms of equity populations being recognized as requiring additional attention to lift folks out of being excluded. But people with disabilities sometimes are not really thought of in that context. And there's a lot of places, a lot of tables that I sit at where I'm still one of the only people who is asking, and what about disabled people? Where do disabled people sit in terms of your decision making here, and how are they being factored into thoughts about, for example, accessible transit in the city is still a challenge. Where are we, and why are we not being considered in the way that we should, given that we are, between 24 and 27% of the population, generally speaking.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. So
that's mind blowing.
There's a lot of challenges.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still that feel of advocacy spreading ourselves thin, people in the disability community. Like I will be the only one in a giant room trying to advocate for the community. A lot of us feel that way, right? Yeah.
I describe myself often as the bad news bears, right? I'm going to show up and say to people, where's our community? Like, why are we still having these conversations? And it's the same for my staff and for many of the consumers that work with us. We are the only people in the room often, and you are the only people in the room often. So there's still a lot of work for us to do. It's another 40 years worth of work, but we're hoping to see changes happen much more rapidly. I think we've got a lot of work to do, and we've got some good partnerships to work on.
Yeah. And we are running out of time, unfortunately, but really quickly, we want to know what's next for CILT. Any upcoming projects or visions for the next decade?
Oh, we have visions. Our vision generally is social and economic equity for disabled people. And as I said earlier, there's a number of places where we're still not quite meeting those goals. But we do have a couple of really interesting new projects. So we are the conveners of the GTA Disability Coalition. So it's a cross-disability coalition of grassroots organizations that are all focused on expanding the rights and of disabled people particularly municipally. So we work with some brilliant partners here in the city on trying to influence municipal policy on things exactly like poverty, accessible transit, and in particular housing. These are the challenges, the main challenges that we see facing our community. We also have a new project called our IDE+A project, which was funded by the United Way. And it brought together a really great group of disabled folks who developed curriculum training on how to support other nonprofits to be more inclusive of disabled people in their work. A lot of people come to CILT because they know that we get disability, but they should be going somewhere else, in fact. So we're offering that. And the people who developed it are incredible, diverse group of consumers. They're the people that teach it. So they actually go out to these community organizations and say, I'm a disabled person myself, and here's what you can do. And we've just had a grant, an Enabling Change grant, to expand that to community health centers too. So that's great.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Congrats again, and thanks for coming on the show to share the details of 40 years of CILT. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It was really great to be here. Thank you so much.
That is 40 years of the Center for Independent Living in Toronto, and Wendy Porch is the executive director. And that's it for today's edition of Kelly and Company. Nisreen Abdelmajid and Ramia Amadin will be back tomorrow when we talk about midweek being the new weekend. Mary Mamalidi is telling us why this dining moment is happening. Also, Marcus McCracken is here with a final word on accessible gaming before we wrap on the 27th of June. And he's got a gaming pitch that he's got updates for us. We'll be back then. Catch us tomorrow.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly and Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.